Hello, everyone. I'm Meredith, and with the BK Meditation Center, and where we have Friday night conversations. And I'm delighted tonight to get to interview. I hate to use the word old friend. Let's say longtime friend. I've known Sanjeev Chatterjee for many years, but I actually knew of his work before I even knew him. His impressive documentary work, his film work, his all of the projects that he's been involved in for so many years through the University of Miami. And if I were to tell you all of his film accomplishments, we'd be here like all night, okay? So I'm just gonna read off a couple of things so you can get an idea of his amazing film career. Sanjeev, he is a multi-award-winning media maker who is focused on global documentary work for over 25 years, maybe even over that. Sanjeev's a professor in the communications department with the University of Miami. He was the founding executive director of the Knight Center for International Media at the University of Miami from 2007 to 2011. And then he also served as the vice dean of the School of Communications at UM. And in 2011, he went back to India, where he's from, and spent some time back there. And he became a two-time Fulbright Nehru Scholar. So welcome, Sanjeev. And I didn't even mention all the films because there's a long list of films that you have made.
Thank you very much, Meredith, for this very kind words.
Yeah, well, it's impressive what you've done, but it's not just a matter of making a lot of films. I mean, I feel that it's the messages that come through your films, and that you make a point in what you do, and it can affect people and the way they think. And I'm thinking about when I saw your first film many years ago, One Water, and how it just changed the way I was thinking about water and the water shortage in the world. And you were focusing on two countries, India and Africa. And it just changed the way I thought. So what I'm wondering is that is your aim as a documentary filmmaker to be able to change the way people think, or to shine a light on an issue that people just really feel moved to even, maybe even help be part of the change with their awareness?
I think, my experience is that your own attitude and your own kind of perception of your work evolves over time. I started when I was very small, thinking that I wanted to be in Bollywood films in India. And then I came to college, and, that was my first really exposure to the world, and realized that maybe films can have a purpose. And I was one of the first employees of an organization in Delhi called the Center for the Development of Instructional Technology. It was basically an organization that focused on rural development in India, and to tell the stories of rural development in India. And not only that, so it was not only going out and making films, but it was also partnering with villages and communities in the making of films. So this was very early innovation, based partly on the Canadian CBC initiative called Challenge for Change. And it was very exciting times, just going to villages, but make films, but also help farmers and villagers use this new emerging technology of video, which was much more user-friendly, to help them understand how it works and go shoot films and edit films with them. So that kind of a ethos of my own work has stayed with me, but the thinking about it has moved on.
So really what you're saying is that you were always engaging communities. You didn't just come in to look at a community and tell a story about a community, go and interview a bunch of people. You wanted to involve them personally. So
Yeah, that's what I learned. Once I came in, once I started thinking about purpose and found this organization, it was very cutting edge in India at that time. This organization, and it paid almost nothing, but I stuck around for about 2 years before coming to the US to actually formally get trained in making documentary films.
And I know that it's been a long journey for you. I mean, like you say, working on a lot of films. What would you say has been maybe the most meaningful project that, like you say, next to maybe your first project that you have done where you have felt, wow, I did it. I did what I wanted to accomplish. I made my point. I got people involved. I made something that affected people's lives. Anyone stand out?
Not really, because, the choice I had after finishing an MFA in New York was to either stay in New York or go to Los Angeles and be in the industry, or come to academia and have the freedom to do the kind of work I wanted to do. And I realize now, looking back, that it was always kind of trying to do the next thing that the world is not doing, and trying to find out, if some idea in my head could be made practical. So in that sense, my funders and supporters have called my work experimental, and I embrace that idea that every time, the fact that I put food on the table as a professor affords me that luxury. I don't expect that from people who are making a living doing media, but the kind of work I do is experimental in nature. And every time it is, of course, informed by everything else that has gone before. So in that sense, I'm always looking. One Water certainly is a milestone, and I'm very fortunate to have been associated with that. No film is made by an individual. Well, there are, but at that scale, it wasn't about India and Africa only. Actually, that film was shot in 15 countries across the globe. So, to just having had the great fortune of working on a film like that, you then start to wonder, okay. After some film which has reached about 400 million households across the globe, what's the next thing you can do? And you start experimenting again in the small scale. I don't have contacts, neither will Hollywood studios, I think, want to do the kind of work I'm doing. So you build up, you start to build up again, and then you start to see. So yeah, currently, I'm trying to build something in a different model, and basically, it is an idea, a big tent, as I like to call it, of trying to promote the idea that it's important to dream of a great future for yourself and for communities, and to give it shape. And it's not enough to dream, but you have to really work on those dreams. And it takes effort. It takes going into the details and to make it work. So to promote this, last year when COVID hit us, we did a online call for short videos from individuals, just articulating what their dream is for a post-COVID world. And it was, it was moderately successful. We didn't have any marketing as such, just pushing it out and people submitting. So that's up on a website, and we started partnering with other people. So there's a teacher, for example, in Pennsylvania called Jeffrey Harlan, who has a foundation called the Dream Cloth Foundation, I think. And his idea is to go to schools and work with children to make little pieces of cloth with their dreams written on it. And our dream is now to make 4 million or 4.5 million of those little flag kind of things that have children's dreams from all over the world written on it. And the back, we want to categorize it with the Sustainable Development Goals. So I don't work on that project, but that's kind of a loose kind of a connection that we have to others as well. And now I'm on the 12th episode of my podcast, which is called Where Dreams Come From, talking to people who have succeeded in various walks of life in various ways, talking about where that dream came from and what it took to get there.
So when you say your dream, and I'm so glad you brought it up, because I definitely wanted to spend some time talking with you about it, it's not that a person has a dream. I listened to a couple of them. They're excellent to your
Thank you.
podcasts. So it's not that a person has a dream and then they go and they follow through on their dream. You're saying kind of they more have a vision. They're not necessarily sleeping. They're just have a vision for their life. And then they start to bring that into their life, whatever it is that they're envisioning. Is that kind of like it?
Yeah, that was the initial assumption. What I'm finding out is that for many people, the process itself is the dream. So, it's just their personality that, they could never be defeated because they believed in the process. So the latest episode is with India's foremost rock star, really. His music is not really rock star. We used to play in two bands together when I was in college. So I knew him at that time. And then suddenly he emerged as this major figure as a bass player and singer. And I hadn't really seen this part of him. I mean, he's a PhD in chemistry and toxicology, and like at the highest level. It reminds me of that Queen guitarist, I think Brian Page, if I'm not mistaken, who was a astrophysicist, something like that. But his thing was that his environmentalism, what he learned in college so well at such a high level, all of that got channeled into a purpose, and that purpose came out in the form of music. And he was never forced to go study. His parents were academics, never really insisted, go study, so on and so forth. So for him, that style of whatever comes to me naturally, I will do the best with that. That was the dream, I think. That's what emerges in the conversation. There wasn't like, oh, I want to be an astronaut. And that also is legitimate. But I'm saying that there are people who are successful because they're happy with their process.
So it's not so much about the end goal. It's people, they turn out to be successful because, as you're saying, they're happy with just what they're doing, It's interesting because I had read something that David Brooks, the writer with the New York Times writer, had written a while ago. And he was teaching a media class at NYU. And he said that he was very disturbed at the time that so many media students, journalism students, all their aim was, as you were saying, that you originally felt when you were very young, was, just it's to go to California and become, either famous or make a movie that is super successful. And that really bothered him. And I think he wrote his book because of that. So I was just wondering about your students at the University of Miami. What draws people to your classes, aside from knowing they're going to have a great professor? But what do they want out of their careers, and why do they come? I'm sure they're all different, but
they're different because there's a clear distinction between coming to college to get a job versus coming to college to get an education. And I think that distinction has become more and more pronounced as college has become more and more expensive. So, even parents who are actually providing, I teach at a private university, which is quite expensive. They are looking for tangible kind of outcomes sooner than later. To a large extent. And in that sense, I think from my way of thinking, and it may be outdated, the returns in a creative field for me are not just monetary. In creative fields, the return is the quality of your life and the quality of your networks and the quality of your community, and the value that brings must be, and of course, the quality of your service to the world and to communities and to others. All of that should mix together with how much you actually make for a living. I'm not saying you have to be, poverty stricken all your life, because most of these people are not. Mm-hmm. In my experience, they come to the University of Miami, most of them with some amount of privilege, not all anymore, because the University of Miami has made a great effort at getting a diverse body of students. But from the side of the consumer, the student and their parents, there is certainly a pressure to get the best job and focus a lot on what is the first job and how much you make, so on and so forth. So there is a kind of a tension there that it's just a fact of life.
Yeah, I remember also hearing another journalist once said that most people go into journalism because they internally they want to change the world. So I'm wondering, is that student there in your classroom? Maybe they're not all, some will go on to be lawyers and professionals, all kinds of other professionals or whatever. But is there often one or maybe 8 of them that have that feeling, that yearning to be part of really creating some kind of positive change in the world, and you can see it immediately with your students, or not necessarily?
I think the idea in higher education, the undergraduate years being the years of exploration, still holds true.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the structure is such, we said that liberal arts basically should give you exposure to a broad canvas of disciplines first, and then within that you can specialize and things like that. So, and a lot of freedom as we move forward, post-COVID at least. That particular idea is going to move forward, although universities are more and more focused on STEM education, and it is valued more. But by and large, the undergraduate education in America, in the United States, remains on the firm footing that people discover what they like and don't like in the undergraduate years. And I certainly support that.
Do you think people just naturally, we were talking about earlier, natural, they do, whether it's film or anything else, you eventually find yourself, and I know you've been involved with this whole series. I mean, people don't necessarily find themselves with your podcast. People don't necessarily find themselves immediately. I mean, I know I went into forestry before I realized that was not for me forever. It had to do with the hard physical work, climbing mountains all day. And though I love mountains and I loved being outdoors, and I just fell into my career. It just,
it's not very different, I mean, people who want to be, for example, we have, good looking people who are in front of the camera, they look great, they can speak great, and they come to, let's say, broadcast journalism for that reason, and they do. But they also realize how hard it is. It's not easy. And they have to start at the bottom of the rung in some small market, and the chances of them, making, I mean, we are very successful at the School of Communication, I have to say, as in placing people in these broadcast jobs. And we have some superstars who they look up to, who they say, oh my goodness, Joshua Johnson or Jason Kennedy, that they would like to be like them. But what they get to understand through the experience of going to broadcast journalism, for example, is that it's very hard work, and it requires the writing talent. It requires being untired. It requires being, looking good at the strangest hours. All of those mixed up, and they may ultimately realize that, what, that doesn't really sit well with my personality. I would rather be doing something else. And on the other hand, there are others who are like, oh, wow, this just comes naturally to me. I want to just move forward and do this. So, that's what I'm saying, that, you make choices. And within the 4-year structure of the undergraduate, people will migrate. They'll migrate out and go study politics or history or something else, and say, you know what, that's just like, too upsetting for my kind of view of where I fit into the world.
So again, it has to do with just these inner feelings that we have regarding what we'll do and what we won't do, or what we want to do. And it's not really glamorous work, I think, as people feel that it is, right? I mean, you get on a plane, you're traveling all over the world, you're not home for months. Not everybody can do documentaries right in their hometown forever. Often you have to move on. And like you say, you might go to some tiny little town and work for years, and then maybe you hit it, maybe you don't. So having that aim to, really have some exciting career, would you say, would you say in a way to go into this kind of work, documentary filmmaking, and even other forms of journalism requires courage? Because you got to go into areas that are dangerous. You've got to go into deal with people that maybe you never dealt with before. I mean, it requires a lot of stamina and getting up maybe a lot, 3 a.m. for people that aren't used to that, right? To be on a story, and it's not easy work, is it?
Yeah, I mean, I've come to think that it's not courage as much as it is about your inner passion. I mean, I think being a day trader on Wall Street requires the same kind of. I mean, it's not free of hazards. It's not free of high stress. It's not for everybody. You may think I'm going to be a millionaire on Wall Street, but I know a couple of these people. Who've done very well for themselves. But I realize that it's not as if everyone can do that. So
I guess nothing is guaranteed. Whatever you do, whatever you do in life. So what you're saying is you have to follow what it is that your heart tells you, that your feelings tell you, that you're comfortable with, that you want to do, and then go for that. And is that part of what you're learning in this? I'm sure you're learning a lot from your new podcasts.
Absolutely. When you're young, you think the world thinks like you, the world is like you.
Yeah.
Slowly, you start to see that, you are unique in certain ways. And if you combine them, all your unique things, then you're even more unique. So for example, I can go to a village anywhere in the world and live in a hut. And I really genuinely don't feel out of place, even to this day. I can't expect that from other people because I know other people like, what the hell is going on here? So
this isn't what I signed up for some people, right? This is not. Yes. Speaking of India, I have, that I've spent a lot of, not a lot of time, but many times in India over the years, more for my spiritual growth in meditation. And I'm just wondering and so I've seen a part of India that's maybe different from people, and I have traveled around India, but not all over. So just wondering this is your, where you were born, where you were raised, and you even return there. And, unfortunately things are, difficult right now, not possible right now. But what would you like people that maybe have never been to India to know about your country, that they don't know or that they don't recognize about India, which is an absolutely fascinating country? But, that's my experience. Yeah.
Actually, I don't understand the present India at all. That's my conclusion, because I was born in a Brahmin Hindu family. I'd never really practiced any of those things, but just being born into that kind of privilege gives you some insights. And we always grew up thinking, especially from the point of view of Hinduism, that it wasn't really a religion for us; it was a way of life. And there's been books written about Hinduism as a way of life rather than a religion. That comprised of acceptance, and it comprised of kindness. It comprised, I think, of basically seeing the world holistically. But I think that in our times, the idea of otherness that has been so attractive to politicians and politics everywhere in the world has seeped into Hinduism as well, to claim an exceptionalism in the face of Muslims, in the face of globalization, in the face of technological innovation, and a rhetoric that has emerged is unlike anything that I grew up with.
Well, I would say it's probably just connected to the way the world is thinking right now, isn't it? That kind of attitude. So it's sweeping across the world. I mean, it's not just in India.
Correct. Correct.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Interesting. Impact, like I felt, I've seen, like I said, some of your films, and I can see that they do make an impact. But I'm thinking about themes that have happened. I mean, there's so many issues today, again, we could go on all day, but I'm not talking about even the biggest issues, but I mean, just an example, being a vegan, being a vegetarian. I don't, I'm surprised when I meet a lot of young people who have embraced this, because they weren't probably raised like that. So I'm just wondering, do you think that it has to do with not just one movie that can change someone's life, or is it? Or do you think it's a series of just programs that maybe shine a light on, maybe just the effect that it has on our land? I was watching the Attenborough movie, who said at the end, he said, this is not his last movie, but the one before that, he said he feels that one of the hopes to really reverse all the problems in the world is that more people would embrace not being total vegetarians, but they would stop eating meat, eat less meat. And I was surprised. I didn't expect that from him, to hear that. I don't know. I mean, for all I know, he could be a vegetarian, but I didn't think so. And so I'm wondering, I heard that and I was like, wow, he's saying that at the end of his film, after showing us the whole world and the problems happening with the animals dying and and the shortage of land for the animals to eat. So I'm just wondering, is it more than just one, you can't hit people with one issue, one story. It's like another story, and then people start to get it and they do start to create change.
When I came to the United States in 1987, there were 3 networks, and the information flow was from, in the evening, in the prime time, was from Peter Jennings, Tom Brokaw, and Dan Rather.
Mm-hmm.
That was, these uncles coming into the living room and telling us what the world was like and what we should think and how we should think. In the span of 3 decades, that space has got divided, subdivided, and further ad nauseum into so many channels that kind of influence is no longer possible through the media.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe in the spiritual, religious space, that's still possible, but I doubt that, because the possibility in the digital age of people holding their own little audiences has just emerged and now is proliferating at a rate that is hard to grasp.
Mm-hmm.
So when that happens, then what the media does to us in terms of numbers is limited. It can do something to me, but I am probably part of a very small audience. So, I like Meredith Porte, and I listen to her every day, and she talks about kindness to animals, and I have some trust in her. I don't trust anything else, so I'll go along with that.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you really have impact? So this is what I think people like William Uricchio at MIT are saying, that we used to live in a time where media did things to us, but we must think in our times what we can do with the media to make an impact. And the answer is really use the media to build community. So even my small audience, if I persist, and if I'm strategic about it, and if I'm not only using my podcast, but I'm using different platforms and I'm partnering with other people. So there's movies, there's YouTube videos, there's radio shows, there's a podcast, there's photographic exhibitions about dreams, let's say. Mm-hmm. Then the chance of it actually having an impact around that community that you built, and you expand it by just being persistent on just keep doing it. This community building is the thing that I want to do with media. And Henry Jenkins, for example, at USC has already called it for a while, transmedia approach, that we want to work on a transmedia platform. We don't want to work on one thing. And the amplification will come once that community basically then seeps over to the mainstream media.
That is actually fascinating because that's, I mean, I think it's some level, I don't understand it exactly what you're, I mean, I understand what you're saying, but I've experienced that where you just are committed to something that has to come from within you, something that you feel is good. And
I think it's within the community. It's the time of claiming something for yourself. I mean, just tell me, do you actually know one Hollywood star today who's really a star?
Mm-hmm.
At the level of a major star of our times, Julia Roberts, let's say.
Yeah, right.
Do we have one?
Not like it used to be, it was like the stars ruled years ago, right? I can't keep up with, these people anyway, and I'm not so interested maybe when I was younger, but I do love what you're talking about is community engagement and making an impact. And perhaps if you can just make an impact with something good with a few people, and then more people get involved and more people get involved. And I know I've gone way over my time, but you have so much to say and share that again, I could probably go on all night with you, and that's probably why your students love you. And but I've seen it with work that you and I have been involved with Images and Voices of Hope, which was about the media, engaging the media to think of themselves as agents for change. And now Images and Voices of Hope is merged, as you know, with a much bigger, I don't want to say bigger, but the two together is bigger. The Peace Studio, where they've, involved with the arts and with the media, with this belief, just one by one, good can happen in the world. So I think if you try to think too big, like I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that, then, you're probably going to, I don't want to say fail, but you're probably going to be pretty frustrated, right? So maybe if you just want to close with something that you'd like to add, and I thank you so much, for taking this time to be with me.
Oh, thank you very much, Meredith, for giving me the opportunity to say a few words here. Thank you.
And I hope people will tune in to your podcast. Tell them again, if they didn't get it, the name of it.
Yeah, it's called Where Dreams Come From. It's on all major platforms, Where Dreams Come From. Thank you very much.
It's an absolutely beautiful and inspiring podcast. And I watched a couple of them, and I'm definitely signed up now, subscribe, and I'll be watching. Listen to me, TV person. I will listen to more of them in the future. So good to have you on the program. Thanks so much, Sanjeev.
Have a great night.
Yeah.
Thank you again, Meredith.
All for being with us, and hope you'll tune into the BK series of this on Friday nights. But we have many classes, spiritual classes, meditation classes, all kinds of programs that we have on our BK Facebook and also on YouTube, BK Miami Facebook. Thanks for joining.